today about how to raise private equity for infrastructure projects. And I'm not going to talk more details about that. I will let him, as I said, introduce himself briefly, and then I will start the project. But I would say if you free flow, you can
I think I'll do that.
sliders themselves.
Do we really need the microphone? Or
It's
No, because
The microphone is
okay,
there.
but you need a microphone. Okay.
Because we got used to.
Actually, time is short.
Yeah.
This is a topic. There is a presentation. I'm not going to go through the whole presentation. Very quickly, a little bit about myself. I have been working in infrastructure area for a little over 20 years. Before that, I was an investment banker. Before that, I was an entrepreneur. I had an IT company, believe it or not. So over the last 20 years or so, I had an opportunity to work in infrastructure, energy areas, developed more than 5,000 megawatts of power plants all globally, worked in almost 10, 11 countries, managed both in finance, risk, commercial, as well as the CEO of a division. So that's very short about myself. If you need to know more, obviously I can tell you more without wasting much time. So I will try to make it interactive because I don't think it's helpful. We all kind of have a lot of experience. So we should sort of ask questions and let's make it interactive. Without making it as a class project, let's make it more story-based. I'll share with you some of my experiences and a couple of ground information. When I'm going to talk about raising capital, I'm going to talk about both equity and debt. Fundamentally, the investors look at investments more or less the same way when they evaluate any investments. And so when they're looking at your business, they're going to look at the same way. The structure of a transaction may be different. So that's kind of a more, I would say, interchangeable, debt and equity. Second piece of it would be, I have done projects in Bangladesh as well, first large-scale project finance power plants in Bangladesh. Haripur and Meghna, total 810 megawatt between 98 to 2001. I did those. So I want to make sure that you all know I don't have any political affiliation. And so if there is something comes up through a discussions, whether here or outside, please assume that I'm more or less apolitical. I don't have a political lineage one way or other, or affiliation. That's mostly it, and so let's get down to it. What do we need to raise capital? And I have had an opportunity to raise a lot of capital, both for individual projects as well as the corporate. So, I mean, from the last count, it was more than $18 billion I've been able to raise, from commercial banks, private equity, to infrastructure funds, to multilaterals, bilaterals, and capital market, particularly the New York capital market, and some of the local jurisdictions as well. So, what do we need to raise capital? With this small time, let me give you a quick story. So, it was in 2004, I was, for the company I used to work for, I was told to go and develop a project in Bulgaria. So, I'm a Bangladeshi guy. I have no idea how European sort of economy works and what the culture is. So I went there, and when we went to develop that project, there was a developer who was developing this project. When they put it in front of you, they basically said, you have a sales contract for 15 years after you have fully constructed it. You have a government guarantee behind this. You have a fuel supply contract. You have a site totally identified. So on paper, this is a fantastic project, right? So if somebody looks at it as a business plan, it's a fantastic business plan. But can you raise capital? When we looked at it, there's no way you can raise capital because each and every part of it is divided into detail. When you start to look at the sales contract, you find the money that you make out of it, you can't even pay for your expenses because the way the mechanism works, there are sort of many issues that you find it. So I have a very simple logic to raise capital. Very simple logic is, you may have a business plan, but you do not have a business. If you do not have a business, you do not have capital. It's a very simple idea. Now, again, devil is in the detail. What does it mean when you say there's a business? When you do infrastructure, let's look at the definition of infrastructure. What is it? It's a physical structures, physical frameworks that you need to do human activities. So whether it's a road or airport or internet infrastructure, whether it's infrastructure related to fiber optic, right? Whether you do a satellite communication infrastructure, these are all physical structures. You need that. If you do not have it, you're not gonna have a Google, you're not gonna have a Facebook or whatever you do, right? So that infrastructure has to run as a business. There's no charity project. And you need to have those businesses or physical structures make money for a long period of time, not 1 or 2 years. You know, some maybe 15, 20 years, some may need even 40, 50 years. So for a longest period of time, this physical structure has to make money. That's what I mean, whether you have a business or not. You may have a fantastic project. You may have a fantastic business plan that tells you more theoretical level, yeah, it works. So let's go to Bulgaria back again. What was the problem? The site that we had is a brownfield site. And what happened was government basically sold part of it to a local politician. He's also a local thug. And what did he do? He was asking for a lot of money. The amount of money he was asking for, that was close to 10, 15%, 10 to 12% of the overall project cost. I'm talking about a project with close to $1.8 billion. He was asking for $200 million just for that land, piece of land. So it's extortion. Does this work? It doesn't work. If you look at the way government guarantee works, it's actually not a guarantee. Government is saying that, you know, we are giving you a lot of comfort. Based on what? What is standing behind it? There is nothing standing behind it. If you look at the offtake contract, the offtake contract had a government entity like Bangladesh PDB, right? Some of you may have faced it. So PDB, does it have any balance sheet? Can it really pay over 40 years? The same entity Bulgaria had couldn't pay over 40 years, not even 2 years, right? So you have to look at the business as a business. You have to look at how are you going to do the construction. Like an infrastructure project sometimes takes anywhere between 2 years to 4, 5, 6 years to construct. It's a complex construction issues, right? You have to really communicate and have a synchronized operation to have that construction done between the government agencies, the port authorities, the transportation systems, to the people that will be working for you. Some of these infrastructure projects can take 8,000 to 10,000 people to do the construction at one point in time, right? So it's a huge, complex system you're running over a period of 5 or 6 years. That in of itself is a challenge. So now, has any one of you done an infrastructure project before? Anyone? You did, right? So you know what I'm talking about in terms of the sheer complexity of a project. Now, when you go to raise a capital, this capital for infrastructure projects is fundamentally different than a venture capital. Because a venture capitalist, when they look at a business plan, they might be taking a lot of risk. Also, they're not putting a lot of money at stake. Generally, a couple of $100,000 to $1 million, maybe 2, 3 million, 4 million at the most, when at the venture stage, right? Then you can go to the second round, third round, you might get to 10 million, 15, 20 million, right? 5 million, okay. So, but in this case, you're talking about anywhere between a couple of $100 million to billions of dollars. So people are not going to take your technology risk. People are not going to take any risk related to your business. This business has to not only do the construction, has to operate for 30, 40 years. So you have to have a very long line of sight to make this work for that long, right? So I think my encouragement for people who wants to raise capital for infrastructure projects, be very diligent on when you do the business plan. And so this is what I say is, if you have a good business, capital is actually unlimited. When people say, hey, it's Bangladesh, we cannot raise a lot of capital, it's basically there is not a good business. And you may have known, you have friends, families, who will come to you and say, I know this gentleman in the current government, he's a minister or he is somebody, some big shot. And he has already given me a MOU with a 20 years of contract with PDB. Is that a project? Is that something you can finance it? Can you raise even a single dollar on top of it? No. When I can tell you at least 5 people spoke to me in the last year and a half who wants to raise capital. Right, and not a single one of them is, they can't even tell you how they're going to even select the site. They don't even have a site, right? But they have a PPA, power purchase contract. And so this is very ample, and then they fail, and they come back and say, hey, it's Bangladesh, we cannot raise capital. It is true, Bangladesh has issues. Like, for example, in last couple of years, global private capital fundraising is in the range of 350 to $400 billion, of which emerging market is maybe 50 billion, 40 to 50 billion. Like 3-4 years ago, it was about 20 billion or so. Whereas the global capital fundraising is about 250 to 300 billion dollars, right? So in the emerging markets of that 130 or 40 of them, Bangladesh is one, right? So yes, it's difficult because zip code make a big difference. But at the same time, I can tell you this, I have done, as I said, I've done 5,000 megawatts and not a single of one of those megawatts, no, I'm sorry, I will take that back. About 800 megawatt was in Spain, but rest are all in really emerging markets, India, Philippines, and Bangladesh, right? Vietnam, Sri Lanka. Those jurisdictions as difficult as Bangladesh is. So it is possible to raise capital. And it is possible to raise capital successfully and have those businesses run successfully. So, fundamental point I'm trying to make is, if you have a business plan with a real business, if you think it through right, you can raise capital. There's no scarcity of it. And so I think I have got some more kind of a technical details, how investors view it. So let's just quickly go through this. We're running short of time. I can take questions, not here. Even after that, I'll be here tonight, and so we can catch up more. The way investors view it, they want to think about this business, because an investor, he has money, but he doesn't have the know-how how to run that business. The biggest thing that he look for is, who is my management team? I'm going to give somebody $100 million or $2 billion. Who am I giving it to? Who this gentleman or lady has that I can really trust. And generally, that's track record, credibility, honesty, your integrity, right? And so then you know what you're doing, and you will be, not only that, this project will take 3, 5, 6 years to really get to a operational stage. I need a management team who is going to stick through that entire period. I cannot really have somebody who's maybe a mega star, but that mega star is not going to really make my project work if he is at the risk of leaving the project company. So you have to have that level of confidence that you have a management team. Then obviously they look at the host country. What is the government is in favor or not in favor? There are many projects in Bangladesh, as you know. Once a government changed from one government to the next, the project evaporates, right? So we were talking about the nuclear power plant. How long has this power plant been in planning stage and construction stage? 50 years now. Yeah, it's I think I remember started construction back in I read it, I was not born. 67 or 68, something like that, when it started construction. So we are still talking about it in AaBea conference. So, you need to make sure that the government policies are aligned. Politics is aligned as well, right? And then in an investor, whether it's a debt investors or equity investors, They want to know, I will have an exit. I want to be able to get out of this investment, sell it to somebody else. So I may have a very successful project, but if somebody else does not buy it, it's not going to actually be helpful to me. So I don't want to put money in for 40 years. I want to put money in for 7, 8, 10 years, right? So with that, I think I'm going to pause. I'm going to stop. Any questions? We can talk.
I think I think there will be some questions related to this because it's a very critical topic of funding. So
Let's give a round of applause to Kazi Hasan. Thank you for your informative speech. Our next speaker